Evelyn Vance opened her eyes to the blinding white ceiling of her hospital suite, luxurious, private, fit for royalty. Her hospitals didn't treat VIPs, they created sanctuaries for them, and this room was once her vision, a design she sketched out herself, refined over months. Now, lying in its center, she realized something had shifted, not in the furniture nor the paintings, but in something far more elusive, the air. There was a weight to it, a quiet finality in how it pressed into her lungs and hung invisible like fog just before dawn. The silence wasn't peace, it was suspense. The staff walked softer now. Their voices had lowered, their eyes lingered then darted away, but the most telling change came from just outside her door. She heard them, Dr. Marcus Hayes, her chief of staff, and her husband, Paul Garrett. Their voices, muffled yet urgent, leaked through the crack in the door. Evelyn had always been a master of appearing vulnerable while absorbing every detail, an old business trick. She turned her face slightly, eyes nearly closed, but mind burning sharp. If they thought she was unconscious, they were dangerously mistaken. Dr. Hayes was speaking. She recognized the exhaustion in his voice, years of working under her thumb, answering to her empire of hospitals. He was a brilliant doctor, but also a man with a habit of avoiding emotional entanglements. This time, though, he sounded human, almost broken. Paul, I won't sugarcoat this. Her condition is deteriorating. The liver has failed. The other organs are shutting down. Honestly, it's a matter of days, maybe 3, possibly less. And then, silence. Evelyn felt it violently, as if someone had unplugged the world. 3 days, the words echoed like a tolling bell. She'd heard predictions before, had stared at timelines and diagnoses with objective clarity when they weren't her own. But now, reality came with the brutal, indisputable truth. This was it. The curtain had drawn, and she was standing on stage in the final act. She should have been afraid. Instead, she was livid. 3 days. Her mind raced through everything she had built. 49 years old and the owner of a sprawling healthcare empire, commercial estates in Atlanta, holdings in 6 financial institutions and 32 commercial properties. Her life was not soft. It had been carved from rubble, especially after her first marriage collapsed. For years, she had worked, built, negotiated, and rebuilt again. She hadn't just lived her life, she had strategized it. She remained childless by choice, compensation for her empire. And in the face of loneliness, when the nights began to echo too loudly, she had found Paul Garrett. Charming, attentive, and 10 years younger, he walked into her hospital to manage operations. Mere weeks later, he walked into her life and filled a vacant chair at her dinner table. She had needed warmth. He offered his shoulder, his smile, and slowly his embrace. It was easy to believe in him, too easy. He played the role so well until that very morning. The door creaked as Paul entered. Evelyn didn't move, she couldn't, or rather, she didn't allow herself to move. His cologne drifted toward her, the same bottle she'd gifted him on his birthday. Today, the scent made her stomach churn. He sat by her side, placed his manicured hand over hers, and gently stroked her wrist with the practiced touch of a man pretending he had something to lose. Finally, he whispered to her softly, almost tender but with a cruel twist underneath. 3 years, I waited 3 years, 3 years of playing the doting husband, waking up to that face, touching this body, all for the money, the house, everything. If Evelyn's body hadn't betrayed her, she would have bolted upright and screamed. Instead, she listened. Your friends, your lectures on morality and business, Paul's voice dripped with disgust. Do you know how badly I wanted to laugh in your face sometimes? You thought you bought me, your younger man, your trophy of loneliness. God, you were so arrogant. Evelyn lay still. Her heartbeat was thundering in her ears, but her expression never changed. She had learned this trick during corporate takeovers, control on the surface, fire underneath. Then came the final blow. The tea, Paul whispered, a little dose each day, just enough to make it look like stress or age. No one questioned it, not even you. They'll call it liver failure. Poor Evelyn, burned out from overwork, I'll inherit it all. He stood, straightened her blanket, bent down and left a kiss on her forehead, mocking her with every breath. Then he walked out. Only after the door clicked shut did Evelyn's eyes snap open. It wasn't weakness that blurred her vision, it was rage, an atomic, murderous, brilliant rage, and in that clarity everything suddenly made sense, her slow decline, unexplained nausea, organ fatigue. The doctors had blamed exhaustion, she had believed it. A bitter laugh died in her throat. Only 3 weeks ago, in a moment of paranoia, she'd sent her own blood work to a private lab. She had trusted no one in her hospitals. The results came back twice. Traces of a palliative drug used in end-of-life care meant to ease suffering but lethal over time. Now here she was, a victim of calculated, intimate assassination. But not a defeated one. Not yet. She turned her head, agonizingly slow, toward the hallway where a bucket sloshed and a mop scraped against tile. Life outside her world was still moving. "Girl," she called, her voice was weak, nearly lost in the room. The noise paused, then the door cracked open. A woman peeked in, young, black, slender frame, dark hair tied back. Her uniform identified her as one of the janitorial staff. Chloe Jefferson. Evelyn had seen her before, a worker, invisible like most, but something in her eyes that day, pain and strength in equal measure, stood out. Chloe stepped in unsure. "Are you okay? Should I call the nurse?" "No," Evelyn whispered, fighting to sound alert. "Close the door." And just like that, Evelyn Vance's final chapter began, not in surrender but in strategy. Chloe Jefferson stood still by the door, clutching the handle, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. She wasn't used to being needed. She cleaned rooms like Evelyn's for a wage that barely paid rent, kept her head down, did the work others overlooked, and accepted the silence that came with it. Yet now, a billionaire businesswoman, frail in a hospital bed, was locking eyes with her, not as a patient to a janitor, but as a woman making a judgment. "What's your name?" Evelyn asked, her voice rough but commanding. Chloe Jefferson." Evelyn nods. "Good, Chloe, I'm very awake. I heard everything that man said. My husband wants me dead, but I won't just lie here and let him win. I need your help." Chloe stepped back. "Me? Wait, I'm not a nurse. I can't." "You don't need to be anything but quiet and invisible. That's why I need you. You're not one of them. You don't work for me. You're not a doctor. You're not on my husband's radar. That makes you powerful." Chloe's arms folded across her chest involuntarily, a reflex from years of instinctive defense. Against life, against disappointment, against the weight of working too hard for too little. "If you get caught helping me, I could lose my job," she said. "If you listen to me," Evelyn said with fire in her eyes, "you may never have to work another day in your life." That stopped Chloe in her tracks. "What do you mean?" Evelyn's breathing grew shallow, each word costing her. "I did my homework before bringing this up. You took care of your mother until she passed, used up your savings for her end-of-life care. You've been repaying those medical debts since. You live in a one-bedroom apartment and take 2 buses to work. You've never had a break." She paused, then said, softer but dead serious, "I can give you one." Chloe's hands trembled. "What do you need me to do?" Evelyn pointed slowly to the nightstand. Her voice cracked. "My cell phone, unlock it, go to contacts. You'll see a man named Jason O'Connell. He's my attorney. Call him, put him on the phone with me. Now no one else must know I'm awake, not my husband, not Hayes, not even the nurses. Tell him it's urgent, personal." Chloe hesitated for a moment longer, and then moved. With careful hands, she pulled open the drawer. The sleek black phone was there, cold and expensive. Her own Android was cracked, held together by a plastic case she bought at a dollar store. This felt like touching royalty secrets. She dialed the number. It rang. 3 long rings, then. "Jason O'Connell speaking." Chloe's voice was shaky. I'm calling from the hospital. Ms. Vance asked me to contact you. She says it's urgent, very personal." There was a long pause on the other end. Then, "She's conscious." "Yes, sir." A breath put her on. Chloe handed Evelyn the phone, lowering the volume slightly out of habit from quiet hallways. Evelyn gripped the mobile with what little strength she had left. "Jason, it's me. We don't have much time. I need to rewrite my will. Today, bring a public notary and a neutral physician. Hayes must not know about this, nor Paul, understand?" "Yes," Jason didn't hesitate. "I'll bring Tiffany and the legal kit, 1 hour." Evelyn hung up and returned the phone to Chloe's trembling hands. "Thank you," she whispered. Chloe blinked. "What now?" "Now you stay here, say nothing. When my lawyer arrives, I need you to stay as a witness. That alone might save both our lives." Chloe slowly nodded. She dragged one of the visitors' chairs to the bedside and sat down like a soldier taking a post. The weight of what she'd stepped into landed heavy. The billionaire dying in the expensive bed just trusted her with her fortune and her revenge. Hourglass not done 55 minutes later, precisely on the hour, the door creaked open with a quiet knock. Jason O'Connell entered. A tall, meticulous man in his 50s, sharp-featured and calm under pressure. He wasn't just Evelyn's lawyer. He was her firewall, the fixer, the kind men like Paul Garrett avoided for good reason. Behind him walked Tiffany Morrow, his assistant, young, brisk, tablet in hand. She immediately closed the door behind her. Jason approached the bed. His eyes narrowed the moment he saw Evelyn's face, not in pity but in calculated urgency. "I heard," he said softly. "I'm listening." Evelyn wasted no words. "I want Paul disinherited. I want every scrap of what I've built to go to Chloe Jefferson." Even in his years of handling wills and crises, O'Connell blinked once. "The cleaning staff. She's clean, no strings. Paul doesn't even know her name. That's exactly what I need." Chloe looked down, feeling suddenly like a pawn in a very expensive game of chess, but Evelyn's hand softly brushed hers. "Not a pawn," Evelyn murmured, "my hand of justice." Minutes later, sealed in legal procedure, the room filled with chosen witnesses. A neutral psychiatrist from a different hospital, who verified Evelyn was alert and mentally sound. The on-call public notary confirmed the entire process legally. Tiffany and a nurse both signed as independent witnesses. Jason began recording everything. The notary read the declaration aloud. "I, Evelyn Vance, of sound mind and conscious decision, do hereby leave the entire estate, consisting of premarital assets, including my properties, businesses, and accounts, to Chloe Jefferson." Evelyn's hand trembled, but she signed. The thump of the pen on paper echoed bigger than any gavel could. "Not one penny to Paul," she whispered, "not one damn thing." The nurses found her body just after dawn, her face shockingly serene, peaceful, as if she had gone into the night with no regrets. No suffering, no struggle. Chief of Staff Dr. Hayes signed off on the time and cause: multi-organ failure, end-stage complications from liver breakdown, a quiet death, painless, or so they all believed. Outside the room in the hallway, Paul Garrett wept with astonishing authenticity, not the wailing of a devastated widower but the believable, muted sobbing of a man who had always been poised. He allowed his voice to crack just enough. His hands trembled precisely on cue as nurses approached him with sympathetic pats and soft condolences. "She was everything," he whispered, pressing a folded handkerchief to his face. "I should have done more, been there more." The staff offered condolences. They had no idea. None of them knew that just 18 hours earlier, Paul had sat beside Evelyn's bed and confessed everything, believing she was sedated and fading. Believing his game was already won. And now his performance was flawless. Within hours, he was in her office. Sitting behind her desk, stretching out in her leather chair like a man claiming land after war. Paul Garrett reached for a stack of property deeds and smiled. Downtown buildings, the Midtown Hospital campus, commercial centers, residential condos, stocks, dividends, land trusts. All under his name now. He had already called the family lawyer and confirmed what he'd already been certain of. Evelyn had no children, everything she owned was acquired before their marriage, and under state law, he automatically inherited all premarital personal estate in the absence of a will. Of course, he'd already checked for one, opened her safe the night before and gone through every folder. Nothing. Idiot lawyer must not have visited in time, Paul muttered under his breath. or she was too far gone to call anyone. That tiny doubt had nagged, but the absence of any document removed it. She'd been a control freak, sure, but even she hadn't foreseen this last twist. He poured himself a glass of cognac, her best, at least 30 years aged, and walked over to the window. The sky was pale blue, autumn leaves scattered gold across the sidewalks. "I've earned this," he said, swirling the drink. "Every morning I lied in bed beside her. Every time I listened to her run her mouth about legacy and values, 3 years of careful dosing, and no one saw a thing." He took a sip. Shannon from accounting didn't believe in mixing business with pleasure. Old board members had doubted his loyalty. Even Dr. Hayes resisted his recent push for more cost-cutting. Now they'd all work for him. Paul smiled. "Long live the Queen," he toasted to the empty office. "Now the king ascends." Then a knock at the door. He straightened, setting down the drink just fast enough. Probably one of the execs offering condolences, or Hayes, ready to grovel now. "Come in," Paul called. The door opened. Jason O'Connell entered. Paul's body stiffened. Of all the people who might have walked in, O'Connell was not his favorite. The man had always unnerved him, sharp-eyed, private, the kind who said less so you'd guess more. Evelyn relied on him for all big legal decisions, and Garrett had always wondered what secrets lived in the files O'Connell kept locked twice. He was flanked by a younger woman with a tablet, his assistant. Paul forgot her name. Jason didn't offer a handshake. Just a flat-lipped nod. "Mr. Garrett, my condolences." "Thank you," Paul said, somber again. "We lost a remarkable woman." Jason sat without permission, opened a file. "We need to talk about Evelyn's estate." Paul nodded. "Of course, I've already started reviewing a few things." Jason slowly slid a single sheet across the desk. "Ms. Vance signed a new will the day before she passed away. It is valid, witnessed, notarized, and backed by a full psychiatric evaluation confirming mental clarity." Paul stared as if slapped. "I opened the safe," he said automatically. Jason's smile was slight, cold. "That one. This one was recorded, filed, and delivered to the official notary office. I became aware this morning it wasn't stored in her home system, for specific legal protection, her request." Paul's breath hitched. Is this some foundation thing, medical charity, a hospital board? Jason's pause was perfectly timed. No, she left everything to a single individual. "Who?" "Chloe Jefferson." Paul blinked. "Who the hell is Chloe?" And then his voice froze. "The cleaner. The janitor girl from the hallway." Evelyn had talked to her, she said her name, he hadn't even thought she was conscious. Before he could mask his fury, it erupted. "That's not legal," he shouted. "She was in a coma." "No, she wasn't," Jason returned. "She fooled you, she fooled everyone, because she knew the only way to win was to play dead before she died." The press release came at 10 a.m. The entire fortune of Evelyn Vance, CEO of Vance Medical Holdings, has been legally inherited by Ms. Chloe Jefferson, former employee of North Haven Clinic. The transition is currently under legal review. Paul's voice on the other end of a frantic phone call with Victoria Shaw, his mistress, was flipped, furious. "She tricked me, that sociopath tricked me, we're screwed." "Not if we find the girl first," Victoria said, "before this gets permanent." Paul looked back to the will O'Connell had left behind, typed, stamped, signed, airtight. Evelyn had left him exactly what he'd deserved. Nothing. Especially not to a dying woman and a janitor. But here he was, 3 days after Evelyn's death, pacing inside the mansion she'd once designed, trying to understand how she'd pulled it off. How had she tricked everyone? His jaw clenched as he paced the office he believed would be his. It still smelled like her perfume, still looked like her world. She can't win, Paul muttered to himself, not from the grave. But she had, because somehow she'd rewritten her will before dying and left everything, not to him, but to Chloe Jefferson, a girl he didn't even know existed until this week. She was supposed to be background noise, a cleaner, a ghost in the hallways. Now she was worth nearly $40 million. And she was thanks to Evelyn's final move, the girl who could destroy him. But Paul hadn't run out of cards just yet. He called the only person who knew the full truth. Speech balloon Victoria Shaw. His lover, a pharmacist, the woman who had supplied him with the palliative drug Evelyn would eventually die from. He trusted her, she hated Evelyn too, and she had her own reason to make sure the past stayed buried. The phone rang only once, she picked up fast. "I saw the news," she said before he could speak. "The cleaner girl, Evelyn left it all to her." "We need to find her now," Paul hissed. "We reverse this, force her to walk away from the inheritance. She's nobody, scare her, bribe her, just make her disappear." Victoria hesitated. "This is dangerous." "No, it's now or never. Once this will goes through probate, it's over. We lose everything. After 3 years of planning, I get nothing." He slammed his fist on the table. "You get nothing." Silence. Then Victoria said quietly, "Then we go all the way." Magnifying glass tilted left meanwhile, in a quiet city just outside Atlanta. Chloe Jefferson sat in a borrowed apartment with blackout curtains and a new phone number. Jason O'Connell had placed her under quiet protection, discreet but tight. A private investigator named Roy Singleton checked in every day. Chloe trusted him more than she expected to. He'd been a cop once, you could tell. He watched everything. And he was watching Paul. "He's making moves," Singleton told Chloe while sitting at the little kitchen table. "Sent 2 guys from a private firm to track you. They're digging hard." Chloe clenched her hands. "What are they going to do when they find me?" "Whatever it takes to get you to sign away your rights to the will. Best case, threats, worst case, removal." She turned pale. "He already tried to kill Evelyn," she whispered. "He would do the same to me." Roy nodded slowly, "Which is why we're flipping the game." And that's how the trap began. Jason and Roy put together a plan. Make Chloe become the bait. Feed Paul's desperation. Let him believe she's weak and willing. Chloe hesitated at first, but she remembered Evelyn's voice, the promise she made, and the look in her eyes that final night. "Okay," she agreed, trembling. "Let's do it, let's bring him out." The next day, a source from the hospital leaked a location. Chloe was working in a building just outside Charlotte. Paul bought the bait instantly. He drove out himself with Victoria and 2 armed bodyguards. Inside the glove box, a pre-typed legal form, a formal renunciation of inheritance, a $500,000 bribe. And a second option. A shallow swamp just 10 miles away. A place with no cameras, no witnesses. They watched Chloe leave the lab around 7:10 p.m. She was alone, coat clutched tight, walking steadily but slowly, just vulnerable enough. The SUV crept forward. "Chloe, wait up." Paul's voice was calm, too calm. She froze as he stepped out. Behind him, shadows moved, Victoria, the 2 men. One held his jacket oddly bulging at the waist. "Let's talk," Paul smiled. "You're overwhelmed, I imagine. It's a lot to suddenly have, the money, the power, but you're still just you." Chloe held firm. "What do you want?" "To make your life easier, sign these papers, walk away. I'll give you cash, $300,000. No lawyers, no mess. You can go disappear somewhere quiet." She took the envelope, glanced at the form. "And if I do?" Paul stepped closer. "Then we make other arrangements. Like you made with Evelyn." His eyes narrowed. Careful, girl, you're not as untouchable as she thought you were. And that was the line they needed. Police on the ground. Flashlights blazed. From the shadows of the parking lot, undercover officers emerged, guns drawn. Roy Singleton stepped forward, badge out. That's enough, Garrett. Paul turned wild-eyed. Too late. Victoria's mouth dropped open. She looked at Paul, betrayed. The bodyguards grappled with the cops before being slammed down and cuffed. Chloe was pulled away quickly, safe, alive, shaking. Roy handed a recording device to one of the officers. It had caught everything. He confessed on tape, Roy said. Coercion, threats, near kidnapping, we got him. As Paul was shoved into the back of the squad car, he snarled at Chloe, eyes burning with hate. You think this is over? She didn't answer. Because deep down she knew. It just began. A week after the arrest, Paul Garrett was officially charged with first-degree murder by poisoning, attempted coercion of a will witness, kidnapping, threats of bodily harm, illegally obtaining and distributing a controlled medical substance. The evidence was overwhelming, and most of it came from Evelyn herself. She had prepared everything. 2 toxicology reports, a diary of her symptoms, her own statement recorded the day before her death, a surprise will, and a cleaner named Chloe who witnessed his open confession. Even in death, Evelyn Vance had orchestrated a picture-perfect takedown. In the courtroom, Chloe Jefferson sat stiffly. This was her first time in front of cameras, lawyers, and an entire courtroom full of strangers looking at her with curiosity. She used to be the woman no one saw. Now she was the key witness and the sole heir to a $40 million empire. She could still feel that night outside the lab, Paul's voice, the threat in his harmless smile. The weight of that moment settled in every day since his boot steps, still echoing in her memory like gunshots. But now she sat firm. Ms. Jefferson, said the prosecutor, a tall, calm man named David Chen, did Mr. Garrett say anything to you the night you were cornered? Chloe nodded. He gave me a pen and paper, told me to sign away the inheritance, said I'd regret it if I didn't. Did he mention what he had done to Ms. Vance? Chloe met Paul's eyes across the courtroom. He didn't blink. Yes, he said he'd killed her, that he had poisoned her slowly, that nothing would ever tie it back to him. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. It was quiet, furious disbelief. That wasn't even the most damning blow. Because David Chen had more. He presented the recorded audio from Paul's confrontation with Chloe. You think I care? I watched Evelyn break down for months. I made the poison myself, slipped it into her peppermint tea, every damn day. I'm already rich in my mind. I own her now. And then a pharmacy receipt was entered into evidence. Garrett's signature, no prescription. A pharmacist testifying under oath that she'd taken bribes to provide controlled medication used in palliative care for cancer patients Evelyn didn't have. She broke down crying. So did many of the jurors. Paul's lawyer fought hard. He tried to argue that Evelyn was unstable in her final days, delusional, that she didn't know Chloe well enough to leave her everything. But the psychiatrist who had signed off on Evelyn's mental health before she signed the will sat coolly on the stand. Her mind was sharper than mine, she said. I'd never seen such focused clarity from a dying patient. She knew exactly what she was doing. After 4 weeks, the trial ended. The verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Paul Garrett, guilty on all counts. He didn't flinch, just stared at the floor the same way you might mourn a missed flight. But Chloe saw the moment it hit him, the flash of quiet, helpless horror in his eyes when the judge read the sentence. Paul Garrett is hereby sentenced to 27 years in federal prison, no chance of parole for the first 20. Justice not just for murder but for betrayal. A man who thought he could kill someone and wear a grieving mask had been handed a life's worth of silence behind bars. Later that week, Chloe sat quietly in Evelyn's favorite armchair in the house she now owned. Sunlight cut through the long windows in golden lines. Everything smelled of lemon polish and quiet peace. She had watched the court footage every second, and when it ended, she didn't cheer. She didn't smile, but she breathed. For the first time in over a year, she felt like she was allowed to simply exist. In the months that followed, Chloe made decisions quickly and never for the money. She sold one of the hospitals and donated half the profits to a women's shelter in Evelyn's name. She started a scholarship fund for low-income girls going into nursing and hospital administration. She paid off debts owed by several elderly patients caught in insurance nightmares Evelyn's system had fought against. She kept just enough, a modest salary from the remaining hospitals, a decent apartment, a small 2-door hybrid she drove herself. And every week she visited Evelyn's grave. Simple words were carved into the stone. Dove Evelyn Vance, visionary, fighter, unfinished chapter. And every time Chloe stood there, she whispered something different. Some days it was, "I kept my promise." Other times, "He'll die in there scared and alone." But one morning, under blooming dogwood trees, she simply whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." Elsewhere in a gray federal penitentiary, Paul Garrett got a letter. No return address. Inside it was a single sheet of paper. Typed, just 3 words. "I won, eh?" He stared at it for a long time, and then laughed, and then cried, because he knew she had.